Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss the way that various anti-Tory parties, but most especially Labour, are approaching the by-election that will now result from the resignation of the disgraced Owen Paterson. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. Yeah, sorry. Lots of videos, all resulting from the Owen Paterson scandal last week. I think this might be the last one, for a while at least. Never say never, though. I didn't think it would actually be this many, but the approach to the by-election is fascinating. And there's a lot of understandable misunderstandings that I want to explain here. So first things first, when it comes to the next general election, Labour cannot win a working majority. Right? I'm a Labour supporter, a Labour member. I would like to see a Labour government. I'm not going to see a majority Labour government. It's not on the cards. Whenever you read strategies for doing so, and I have done so, there have been people who said, oh no, but if you did this, this and this, you look at them, they're just not credible. The swing needed is far too great. It requires so many things to line up. And it also requires every single person who's come up with any credible way in which Labour could do it requires major gains in Scotland. Does not seem credible because the SNP are not going to lose that many seats when people are by and large happy with them, regardless of their views on Scottish independence. If they're by and large, and how would you not be happy with the SNP in government in Scotland at the moment when you're comparing it to the Conservatives under Boris Johnson? It's not happening. So what of those of us with our feet on the ground? What are we aiming for? We're aiming for the Conservatives to fall well short of a majority of seats. That's it. That would result in a Labour Prime Minister, but one who has to work with other parties in order to govern. Now, some will like the idea of that. Absolutely. Some won't. Doesn't matter. That's all that's on offer. That is the only non-Tory option on offer here. Doesn't matter whether you like the idea or not. But with our first past the post system, the progressive parties keep nicking votes from each other. Now, if I focus on the parties that are active throughout Britain, the Greens, Lib Dems and Labour, together they won significantly more votes than the Conservatives in 2019. If you add on the votes for the SNP implied, you have over half of all the votes cast completely. So those 5 parties represent more than half of all votes cast. All different parties with different aims and policies, but all of them much more aligned with each other's thinking than the Conservatives. As such, they would all like to get rid of the Conservatives. So they should work together in order to reduce splitting the vote amongst themselves, right? Yes, absolutely. Now, with that in mind, there was talk of the main parties pulling out of the North Shropshire by-election, which is the one that Owen Paterson has now vacated, and getting behind an anti-sleaze independent candidate. Now, this would be very much like Martin Bell against Neil Hamilton in 1997, which was successful. Then Labour announced that it was going to stand its own candidate in North Shropshire and said that they were in the business of putting forward a Labour candidate with Labour values. Cue the predictable and understandable anguish from those that know that the Tories will win again if Labour do not work with others. However, this anguish, although it's understandable, is born of only reading the headline news, not paying attention to what's going on the ground. So first of all, months ago now, Keir Starmer was asked directly and he did not rule out working with other parties in a form of electoral pact. Now, in politics, not ruling something out is code for having every intention of doing so. Case in point, Boris Johnson has refused to rule out giving a peerage to Owen Paterson. Now, Starmer said that months ago. Since then, there have been a lot of by-elections. You don't hear about most of them because only Westminster by-elections make the news, such as the formerly safe Tory seat that the Lib Dems took this summer. But there have been a lot of council by-elections going on and a lot of cooperation between Labour, the Lib Dems and the Greens in order to oust Tory councillors. And it has been working well. In fact, only last Thursday, there were 5 by-elections. Many people will not know this. There were 5 by-elections. The Liberal Democrats took 2 of them from the Conservatives. They also held one in a tight contest with the Conservatives where Labour didn't stand a candidate. The parties were working together, all under the bonnet. Now, I'll explain why it's low-key in a bit. But first, if they are willing to work together, and indeed have been doing so with some success over summer, why not for North Shropshire? Well, that's easy to explain. See, some people are calling for the main parties to stand down and get behind an independent anti-sleaze candidate. Just two problems with that. There isn't the independent and there isn't the sleaze. Both of those things were present in 1997 and both are absent here. Martin Bell, 1997, was a well-known former BBC journalist. He was a celebrity and could attract a lot of attention. People knew he was. He was up against the Tory incumbent Neil Hamilton, who's now the leader of UKIP. He was mired in sleaze, just as Owen Paterson is now. But Owen Paterson is not standing. The candidate that the Tories will stand, we don't know who that's going to be yet, will not be marked with sleaze. There won't be a whiff of corruption about them at all. It would be stupid for them to put up someone who's even got some local stain of corruption on them. They'll be squeaky clean. But you might think, well, but what about the wider Tory party? Just a general anti-sleaze, anti-Tory candidate. If this was a marginal seat, you might indeed be able to push that, but it's not. 63% of voters voted for Paterson in 2019. Labour were a very distant second with 22%. Basically, Paterson got nearly 3 times as many votes as the second-placed Labour candidate. A Tory candidate with a clean record? Forget about it. Then there's the fact that there is no independent candidate to get behind. Like, you can't just get some local doctor or something to raise the profile of the by-election. You'd need someone famous, at least locally. Like I said, the parties did get together. They talked about it. And then they concluded there wasn't anybody. In other words, they were willing to give it a punt and drew a blank. The effort was there, the result wasn't. So don't make your hope for electoral cooperation each individual by-election that happens between now and the general election. There may be some by-elections where they work together on the quiet to stop the Tory candidate, and there will be some where it just won't work. This is one case, it won't work. But then I said I'd explain why this cooperation has to be on the quiet, because that annoys me. I'll be honest, that infuriates me. Because what I want is for just an open pact, standing down candidates, only let the electorate have, it's the Tory or this progressive candidate. Which do you want? But there are problems with that. See, here's the thing. A lot of Conservative seats are in areas with a large majority of Conservative voters. State the obvious, why don't you, Phil? Yes, but the point is, these people will not vote Labour. Even when they can see that their Conservative party is behaving disgracefully, and they're not up for that, and they've got no time for Boris Johnson's boorish antics, they'd still rather vote Conservative than Labour. You know, we need these people to vote Liberal Democrat. But here's the thing, they might be willing to do that. But voting Liberal Democrat to oust the Tory means putting a Labour MP in Downing Street. These people don't want that. They'd rather the Tory Lib Dem coalition of 2010. Fine. But it's impossible for them to think that they're going to get it if Labour and the Lib Dems formally ally. So it needs to be done carefully. Give people the option to vote for something that they prefer to the current Conservatives without making them think that what they're really doing is voting for Labour. The other thing to bear in mind when people particularly direct their requests at the party leaders, they don't really have a lot of say in the matter. You know, candidates are chosen by the local constituency parties, really. The party leadership doesn't go around selecting candidates for them. Keir Starmer's not off to North Shropshire to talk to the local people and say, right, I'm giving you this candidate, here you go. Yes, the national body can sometimes veto a candidate, has to be vetted. The last thing you want is to inadvertently select a candidate that embarrasses the party because of views they expressed publicly a few years ago. Yeah, there's a vetting process. Similarly, you do sometimes need a safe seat for one of your parliamentary stars or an up-and-coming. But by and large, it's the local party that manages these things. The candidate will be a local candidate. Using the national structures and rules, you know, but the local people are the ones, the activists are the ones who give up their time to leaflet and knock on doors. They know the local area, the local issues. They are the ones who raise money in their local areas. Some of them even do a really good job of raising their local profile. So it's they who decide, you know, to work with other parties locally to stop the Conservatives. And if it's doable, And there you go. Now, if it's a key target seat, yes, it's not like the leadership does nothing. If it's a key target seat, the national leadership will throw money at it. They'll send their campaign experts. They'll send some, senior MPs to coordinate the local efforts to draw up support. But if they've got no chance, but another progressive party does, they might spend nothing at all on it and leave it to the local party with perhaps a little whisper that maybe it's in the party's national interest not to fight this election too hard. This happened, for example, during Corbyn's time in charge in 2019, Brecon and Radnorshire. Labour had no chance, but the Lib Dems did. Labour stood a candidate, but there was no hard campaigning. Like Jeremy Corbyn didn't even go there himself. It was a by-election. The party leader, of course, they're going to go there if they want to fight that seat. He didn't. They made a show of standing a candidate, but they basically left the Lib Dem candidate all the breathing room they needed to go on and win it. And they did do. And Labour got some stick. They said, well, you lost your share of the vote. That's because you didn't try very hard. Yeah, that's the point. They didn't try very hard. Just as happened in this year's Chesham and Amersham. Labour lost a load of support. They didn't really fight very hard. But it allowed the Lib Dems to win it. And that's what people need to bear in mind. Labour had no chance. The Lib Dems did. The Lib Dems won, both of them, to the cost of the Conservatives. That's how it needs to be. But this is not an option in North Shropshire. The Lib Dems were nowhere. So why risk those Conservatives with a small c in other seats around the country, worrying that Labour and the Lib Dems are getting into cahoots here for a lost cause when they need to keep their powder dry for the general election? But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.